Hello and welcome to the section about photographing animals within the IOP of Falmouth University. Now, I'm going to try and make this as quick as possible, but we get a vast array of animals brought into the department to be photographed, from snakes to horses through to smaller creatures brought in and housed in tanks for a period of time within the lab. So I'm going to try and cover everything in this section, but basically what you need to do is to follow the procedures that we set out for you, which includes writing a risk assessment solely for the purpose of the welfare of the animal. Now, this may seem a little bit extreme, but actually photographing an animal in the studio does fall under the RSPCA guidelines for performing animals. While the animal is here on site, it will be your legal duty to care for that animal, and failure to do so does fall under the Animal Welfare Act. The penalties for failing to provide this could be up to a £5,000 fine and or 6 months imprisonment, which of course is extremely extreme, and I don't want you to be put off by that. There's a vast array of information that can help you complete your risk assessment form that's available on the learning space under the IOP resources page in the health and safety section, and then there's a section there for photographing animals. So when do you not need to write a risk assessment? So if you were doing a fly on the wall documentary where the animal is in its natural environment, or if you're an agricultural show or sporting event, or anything lawfully done under the Animal Scientific Procedure Act. Now, we only need to sign off risk assessments for animals that are being brought into the IOP, but I do suggest, for example, if you were going to photograph an owl with flash photography at a sanctuary, that you fill out a risk assessment. It shows professionalism and will also help you think about anything that might go wrong before you actually get there to site, and we'll cover you. So the risk assessment, it looks very similar to our normal IOP risk assessment. There's just another section there for animal categories. So we've got the sections here. Invertebrates are a bit of a difficult one. They don't actually fall under the Animal Welfare Act. But we here at the IOP believe that any animal, any living thing should be treated with respect while under your care. Also, the invertebrates are an interesting one because, for example, a golden crested newt, if you remove that from its natural habitat and bring it in to photograph it, you would be hit with an extremely hefty fine for doing that. So it's always really important that you do the research first about the animal that you're going to photograph. So we will ask you for the type of animal that you're photographing, and specifically the Latin name, so that we know that you have done your research on what that animal actually is that you're bringing into the department. So there's some general things that you need to consider when you're bringing an animal in. There's a section here that you can kind of read through at your own leisure, for you to be able to start thinking about what you have in mind is actually going to work within a studio setting. So lighting is something that's really important to consider before you're going to do your shoot. You've got two types of lights, really. They fall under two categories of continuous light and flash photography, and both of these have their pros and their cons, and are different with different animals. So it's important that you consider that first. I would say that there are some studios that we would advise that you didn't try to book to house animals, those being in more sort of open spaces. So Studio 4A and Studio 4B shouldn't be booked separately. If you if you do want to book that studio, you would need to book 4A and 4B together so that you have the whole space. And that goes the same for the studios down at Unit 7. So 6, 7 and 8, we'd advise, unless you're booking that whole space, that it wouldn't be a good environment for you to photograph animals in. So something to really consider within that is about animals turning aggressive. And that's not to say that the animal is actually aggressive, but what we're saying is you're bringing something into a new environment that maybe hasn't been photographed before. And you need to make sure that you have booked enough time for the animal to get used to the space so that it doesn't become stressed and irritable while you're trying to do the shoot. So what you're going to need before you do your studio shoot is you're going to need, the day that you turn up, a written consent form from the animal's owner, that they are happy for the animal to be photographed, and contact details for the owner where there is an owner and where that's applicable. So you will need to book the animal in when you arrive into the stores, and stores have to actually let security know that there is an animal on site. And you'll need a risk assessment solely addressing the animal's welfare that is signed by one of the technical team. We do ask that you give us 7 days notice where possible for bringing the animal onto site. If you do turn up and you haven't got this signed risk assessment, you will not be able to do your shoot within the IOP. So you can email us. The email address is on the top of the risk assessment form, and the risk assessment form itself is available on the learning space. So due to it being quite complicated, the different sort of animals that people bring in, we've done a bit of a workflow here so you can make sure that you've done everything you possibly need to before bringing an animal in. Now really, bringing an animal into the IOP kind of falls under 2 categories for us. One is photographing a horse or a dog or a snake in a studio environment, and the other is more aimed at marine and natural history, of bringing an animal in and housing it in a tank within our lab environment, usually for a longer period than 24 hours. So I'm just going to cover very briefly these, but it is definitely worth you, as soon as you know you want to do a shoot with an animal, going through this workflow and making sure you've got everything. So it's really important that you read the guidelines. That's what's going to address for you the issues that you may have that you need to bring up within your risk assessment. It's really important that you research the species and the welfare that species needs, and that you research the diseases that they may carry. And this will inform your risk assessment for mainly cleaning the space after you've actually finished your studio shoot. You'll need the written consent form. And then it splits off into 2 categories of if the animal is going to be in the IOP for longer than 6 hours. If this is the case, then you'll need to provide a rest space for the animal, which the technical team can help you organise and find a safe space for them to be able to have those rest periods. If the animal is going to be on site for longer than 24 hours, then we ask that you fill out a semi-permanent housing extended checklist. And with that, it will just be, for example, if you have an animal in the lab, you'll need to be making sure that you're keeping a record, that you're caring for that animal properly, and that we can see that you're caring for that animal properly. If you do need to bring in any substances like food or medication or cleaning products, you may need to do a cost request form. And again, just email the IOP technical team and we'll be able to help you out with that. So you'll need to check with the owner before the shoot that the animal has not been ill 7 days before the shoot. If so, unfortunately, you will have to cancel it and rearrange it for another time. So then once you've done all that, you want to fill out your risk assessment, and if you need to prepare the tank or housing, or prepare the studio, so you want to make sure that the animal can't escape, can't chew through any electrical wires, and then we ask that you put up appropriate signage in the studio or in the lab environment that you can come and get from one of the technicians on the day. Make sure that your assistant, your model, if you're using a model as well, and the handler or owner have actually read the risk assessment beforehand, so that they're aware of what's actually gonna happen. And then you'll sign the animal into the stores, and then you'll conduct your shoot following the RSPCA animal guidelines for performing animals. Make sure that you're cleaning up the space afterwards and you've left enough time for that to be possible. And then you need to check with the owner at the end of the shoot to make sure that the animal hasn't become ill in the 7 days after the shoot. If this is the case, please contact the IOP at your earliest convenience. So just to remember, this risk assessment is purely for the welfare of the animal that you're working with. And the owner should always be given a copy of the risk assessment, and really to let them know they're going to know that animal the best. So they need to know that if they don't think that animal is comfortable or is becoming stressed, that they can halt the shoot at any point during the session and have a break and reassess the situation. So yeah, if you're not sure on anything that we've covered today, or you've read through the guidelines and you have a question, please contact us either through the email address, over the Facebook page, or you can email myself, Kate Bell, or Jamie Collier, and we'll be able to hopefully answer any questions that you have on photographing an animal. Okay, thank you.